Welcome to It's Our Time. I'm your host, Edidiong Obot, and I have a special guest with me, Mr. Ray Shackelford. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, appreciate the invitation.
No problem. So Ray, tell us about yourself, what schools you go to, what degrees you have, everything like that.
Okay. So again, my name is Ray Shackelford. Born and raised here in Houston,
H-Town.
3rd Ward, H-Town. Grew up at Wheeler Avenue, went to Lamar High School, became an Eagle Scout out of the church. Then from there, I went off to Morehouse College.
All right.
I just needed to get away from my family. And so I always wanted to go to HBCU, and that was the school that gave me the most money. I went on an academic scholarship. I would graduate with a business administration degree, focused on finance, minor in economics. I thought about doing psychology, but just didn't want to take the extra classes. So I finished there, came back home, didn't know what I wanted to do. And so my first, I guess you could say, real job was teaching school. So I taught math 6th through 8th grade on the campus of TSU at Wallop TSU Preparatory School for all boys. Yes, TSU, yes. Go Tigers. Yes. We are also Tigers, but
I know.
So yes, go Tigers all around.
Right.
Taught there, decided I wanted to go back to school.
Okay.
So I started studying at that time for the GMAT as well as the LSAT. And then fast forward, I coached a little bit at KIP Liberation, KIP Spirit. And then I started working full time at the Houston Area Urban League that fall in the housing department, and going to school at night at the University of Houston, where I would ultimately obtain my MBA, Master of Business Administration, focused on business consulting. And I stayed at the Urban League for a little over 3.5 years, working with clients who were facing evictions, foreclosures, became a certified housing counselor.
Wow.
Started doing outreach, going to talk to people about the Urban League, its programs. Became a relationship manager, working with some of the banks that were funding the financial education we were doing for clients. And even got to a point where I was doing special projects for the CEO. And then once I graduated, transitioned into corporate America. And so for the past 5 years, been working in outside sales, first with Coca-Cola and more recently with Grainger. So I guess that's the quick professional background in terms of about me and what I've been doing.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. You said you had a bachelor's in administration
with
a BA, focus in
business administration, finance, correct.
Okay, so do you feel like with both the degrees that you got, the finance or the BA with finance and your MBA, and currently what you're doing, you feel like you're using both of your degrees now? Or is it just more of the MBA that you feel like you're using?
I was about to say, probably more so the MBA. The finance piece, honestly, I did finance because that's what my father wanted me to do. I did not want to focus on finance. I know I wanted to do business. And the focus areas they offered were accounting, marketing, finance, and there's one other I'm forgetting. But I ended up doing that because he wanted me to. And at that time, they were trying to push all of us to go investment bank, and that was actually right before the housing bubble burst.
Wow.
And so I had classmates that got jobs on Wall Street, and they lost everything.
Wow.
And so I guess it wasn't such a bad thing that I didn't want to go that route, and came home and found some other means to get started as it relates to my career. But I definitely more so utilize my MBA more than the finance component of what I do. There's a small element of that, but definitely not to the level where they were training us and developing us. That I haven't really been utilizing that.
So you got your MBA from where again?
University of Houston.
All right, go Cougs.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure I put that in there.
Go Cougs.
And for all those who went to HBCU, go Morehouse as well. Okay, so as far as the corporate side, right, working for Coca-Cola, now working with Grainger, when you came out of your MBA program and now you moved from working more with a community-based organization to now working in corporate America, how was that like transition for you?
So actually, because I was able to work in so many different departments while at the Urban League, I was based out of the housing department, but being one of the young people on the staff, and I think at the time I was the youngest outside of the interns, they had me in every department. Gotcha. So I helped with education, I helped with economic development, workforce training, workforce development. I touched pretty much every component with the exception of HR and finance.
Wow.
Because again, I didn't want anything to do with it, even though I had a degree in it.
Right.
And so because of that, me having that well-rounded background and focusing on consulting while I was in graduate school, I was able to leverage that to transition into outside sales. Now at the time, I didn't realize there was a lot of transferable skills when you look at consulting and the just overall holistic experience I got from the Urban League. Mm-hmm. But once I went through that interview process and got to see what was really involved when you're talking about business development, there was a lot of things that rolled over. And it's definitely worked out to my benefit. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I wasn't making a lot of money at that time, but it helped me to be able to leverage that again for better opportunities. So thankful for that.
So Urban League was a good training ground for you to get you ready for the corporate.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I want to know what advice you would give to a person who may be in college now or may have graduated college in terms of choosing a major. That's one role. And then also for those maybe who graduated already going to grad school, like what advice would you give to those two types of people?
So the first one, when it comes to choosing a major, you definitely need to look at what do you like to do, and then what is your lifestyle.
Right.
And so a lot of people like to do very specific things, and you also have to take into account you want to live a certain way.
Right.
That's just facts of life. And so based on that, you would determine, okay, this is the area I want to focus on. And you should probably, if you have the opportunity, look to shadow people, because that allows you to really see what they're doing. Because a lot of us think we want to do X, Y, Z until you get in there, you get in that space, and you're like, this is not for me.
Right.
And so one of the things I did get exposed to by working through the Urban League was some of the things I didn't like. The fact that in certain roles, I would not have the ability to really interact with the community. I was more behind the scenes. Gotcha. And so for me, obviously over the course of my life, I found out that I like to interact with the community. That's a big part of who I am. And so having the ability to do that, interact with customers in corporate America, that has served me well because that's a strength of mine. And so definitely look at that when you're looking at majors. And the second question
is for those who graduated and they're thinking about grad school, what kind of advice would you give them?
So for grad school, because I have people ask me all the time, should they get an MBA? And my thing is, based on what you want to do you need an MBA? Because more than likely you're gonna have to take on some additional debt. A lot of people from our generation, the whole financial debt crisis relates to student loans and whatnot. And so if you don't need it, you may need a certification.
Right.
Because that's just as good and you spend way less money.
Exactly.
Or if you're able to obtain the necessary skills by doing some type of apprenticeship. That's not necessarily something that we talk about as much with our generation, but it's still, I think, something that is very beneficial. So if you can do some of those things to still obtain the same knowledge, or even reading a book, but it also depends on the job you're trying to get, because it may be required that you have an MBA or some type of graduate level degree. That's an entirely different story. So it just depends on what you want to leverage it for. For me, I needed that in order to transition into corporate America, just because the experience that I had coming out of undergrad there was some things that I tried to kind of talk up to transfer in that space. Right. But I wasn't effective at it. And ultimately, the fact that I had that holistic experience at the Urban League coupled with the MBA, and in my MBA program actually working for corporations on consulting projects, it made it so much easier for me to transition, because once you have some type of work experience in that space, even if it's not the exact same thing, they just accept you much easier versus you trying to transition from a completely different sector. That's why I needed it, because I had classmates who were in oil and gas. They would come to class, but they just needed a piece of paper. Right. And they let me know that. For me, I was trying to get the best grades possible. So completely different circumstance. Right. So it just comes down to need. Okay.
So you mentioned earlier that you like to be more involved in the community. What are some ways that you're involved in the Houston community now?
So, well, Coming out of graduate school, I was still working at the Urban League. That was when I got involved in leadership with the young professionals. I first joined HYP, Houston Area Urban League Young Professionals, in 2009. And the way I got connected to them was actually through my mother, because she used to work for the Urban League when I was in high school, and she made me go to programs and would have me read pamphlets about like hepatitis B and getting tattoos. And so my mother, who worked under Sylvia Brooks, that was how I got started with that. And so because I was home from school and she felt like I needed to get more involved, she actually paid my membership at that time.
Wow.
And the backstory with that is because my father had me doing any and everything growing up. And so once I got to college, I just wanted to exist.
Right.
I mean, I was still in organizations, but I took a backseat. I just wanted to be a member. I didn't want to be in leadership.
Right.
And so for me, something was missing. And so her pushing me that way ultimately got me back to where I needed to be. But coming out of graduate school, that's when I got involved in leadership with the Urban League, ultimately becoming president, and now currently serving as Southern Region Vice President for the National Urban League Young Professionals. I also serve on the Independent Police Oversight Board for the City of Houston, where we look at use of force cases and where an officer may discharge their weapon. We review them to see if the findings are accurate or if there needs to be additional investigation. We also make recommendations as it relates to training and discipline, and we submit that to the police chief, the councilwoman or councilman that's responsible for public safety at the time. More recently, that was Councilwoman Stardig, as well as the mayor. And I also participate on the body camera audit team.
Wow.
So I do that twice a year where they randomly pull 20 videos, and I'll sit there for 2 to 4 hours just looking at body camera.
Okay.
Again, looking for different things that may not be going according to how they're governed or how they should be. And then also I serve on the executive board for the Emerging 100.
Okay.
As the parliamentarian, and primarily serving as someone who provides guidance and support as that organization is trying to grow. So I think that's everything.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure. I'm also alumni from Project Blueprint with United Way, alumni from Houston Black Leadership Institute through the Greater Houston Black Chamber. So I assist with different things pertaining to them, because I actually spoke to the class this past Saturday when they were having their politics day.
Okay.
So, but yes, I'm heavily involved in the community. These are all volunteer things that I do.
Wow.
Because that is what I'm ultimately passionate about. So.
Wow, so y'all, Ray Shackelford, he is definitely involved in the Houston community. You can catch him at some kind of networking event or speaking at an engagement or just doing community service, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to move to a quick break, and hopefully we can see you back soon. We're back with It's Our Time with Edidiong Obot and our special guest, Ray Shackelford. So if you guys missed it, he graduated from Morehouse, University of Houston, MBA, BA in Finance, very much involved in the community in various leadership roles, and he also has a full-time job working at Granger while he's doing all this, okay, y'all? So he is very, very, very involved. I want to talk about like balance. How do you get a chance to balance all of your movements that you're doing in Houston in terms of being involved in the community, as well as maybe you want to do stuff personally, business-wise or family-wise? How do you find some time to balance all of that?
So the two things my father has probably preached to me the most since coming home from school is balance and humility. And so when I look at, and for him, he draws everything obviously from our faith. So it starts with God, then family, and then you just kind of organize everything from there. For me, it really just comes down to my belief system, who I am in my core. I mean, I make time for family, whether it's, with one of my nephews, with my daughter, my brother, my sisters. I spend a lot of time with my family. Anybody that knows that. And typically, I always carve out at a minimum Sundays, that's church and family. So even though all during the week I may be running around to all these different events between work and these volunteer efforts, I definitely still make time for family, because at the end of the day, if you take away everything else, that's what you're left with. And so I make sure I carve out time for that. Obviously, we have to work in some capacity because we have to be able to live, survive, pay our bills. So that's important. But I definitely believe to whom much is given, much is required. And so, because a lot of people have helped me to get to the place where I am and put me in a position to be able to do the things I am and have that freedom, and I take it on as a charge where I have to be able to do the same for somebody else. And so I take that very seriously. And I mean, I also carve out time to have fun. There's some people who meet me and they're just like, you're just so serious. And yes, I'm serious about certain things because I believe we need to be, it's necessary. And at the same time, I like to have fun. I have a good time. So you may not see me out doing those things, but trust me, I have fun with my family, my friends. And you have to do that in order to maintain sanity. So, and it's not necessarily like a formula I use, so I don't, map out this is, it just works out. And when people ask me that, I just say that's God, because that's the only thing I can point to.
Okay. So you mentioned that you sit on the police review board?
Independent Police Oversight Board.
Oversight Board. And then you also review the body cameras.
Right. So they choose different members from the panel to review body cameras, tape, twice a year. So we do that. Okay. So I kind of want to know, what inspired you to be involved in those areas, dealing with the body cams and also with the board, the police board that you have going on here. So what inspired you to get involved in those areas? So about, I want to say a little over 2 years ago, I was sitting on the District D Next Generation Advisory Council for Councilman Boykins. And between that and Houston Black Leadership Institute, they're talking to us about a lot of different boards and commissions. And for those that don't know, if you go to the City of Houston website, you can find those opportunities. There's literally at least 100 of them. And they have different requirements. Some require certain degrees, certain professions, etc. And this was actually something that initially was brought to me by the mayor. So Mayor Turner actually asked me to look at this opportunity because there's actually maybe like 10 boards I was interested in. This was one of them, but he asked me to focus on this one specifically. And when he appointed me, and ultimately I looked more into it, and actually now that I serve on it, I definitely appreciate and understand the importance of us having people that look like us on that board and having a voice, being able to speak up for us. It's very critical, and especially when you look at the last few years, and I don't think it's something that has necessarily started happening more, but it's been more visible. It's been much more in the media when you talk about people, black men and women being shot down, gunned down, men of color when it comes to police. And so it was something where there was a need, and I'm definitely glad that, I accepted that charge and just made a year serving on that board. So we're now in the second year, just got rebadged, so I have access to HPD 24 hours. And that helps when you're talking about balance, because I can go in there any time of night if I need to look at cases and review things. So have you run into any interesting cases? Yes, working this board? I have run into. We cannot talk about specifics of the case. We have to sign different documentation around that, so I cannot discuss that. But to answer your question, yes. I'm sure you have some interesting ones. I will say the majority of what I see most police officers are doing what they're supposed to do. And so I feel like that is the positive thing, at least here in Houston. However, there are certain instances where there are things that should not be taking place. And when we see those things, we make sure to put that in writing and let the police chief and his peers know about that. But there's also an interesting dynamic because you have several community members that sit on this panel. So there's 4 different panels that rotate every month. So typically I review cases like once a month. And within that panel, you have 5 other members. And they all don't look like me, they don't think like me. And so that's probably the most interesting thing, is hearing the viewpoints of other people and how they see things, and having to really advocate and explain to them what our perspective is and why that should be important. So that's probably been the most eye-opening thing when it comes to that experience.
Okay. Y'all, so Ray Shackelford, definitely a community servant, to say the least, definitely involved in leadership. And I kind of want to move your attention to this shiny placard he has on his jacket here. It says, Ray Shackelford for Harris County Justice of the Peace, Precinct 7, Place 2. You want to tell us a little bit about that? What is this?
When you said shiny, I thought you were talking about my head for a second. I did just shave my head yesterday, the lights. But anyways, so yes, I have decided to run for Harris County Justice of the Peace, Precinct 7, Place 2. And so for those that don't know, the Justice of the Peace courts are community courts. And so they handle evictions, foreclosures, Class C misdemeanor criminal cases that are punishable by fines. So that's traffic tickets, seatbelt tickets, also small claims disputes under $10,000. You perform marriages, you certify death, things of that nature. It's a common sense court. It's meant for somebody and was created for somebody from the community. It's one where you don't have to be an attorney, and that's why I stress the community piece, because it's intended for somebody who's been active in the community, been serving the people, who's able to be a voice from the bench and understands where they're coming from, able to empathize with those issues. And so because I've had experience working with people who were facing evictions, that was actually my first job at the Urban League when I served as homeless prevention, rapid rehousing case manager. And essentially that was a program where people would come in either with eviction notices, shut-off notices, about to be kicked out of their apartments, and they needed some type of financial assistance. And so we had to review their case, look at, can we help this person? And we couldn't help everybody. Actually, my very first client started crying in my office.
Wow.
And that was not something that I had trained for.
Okay.
And so it got very real very quickly.
Right.
And those experiences, seeing people from all walks of life losing everything, or being able to help them obtain some type of sustainability and get back on track, it was just very powerful. And so evictions is the main thing that you'll see coming through that court. There's very little truancy. There used to be more. It's handled at the school level primarily now. The ones that you do see, it's extreme cases where it's very intentional, but we're not able to put anybody in jail. Now, it can lead you to ultimately end up in jail. So a lot of people call it a gateway court because you can be issued warrants if you don't show up, obviously. And so it's a very important court, and the reason that I decided to run for this specific office is because it's something that touches people's everyday lives.
Right.
When you look at the things that come in there are people who rent, own homes. Everybody's gotten a traffic ticket. And so this court matters because you can end up in this court. I've been in JP court for a traffic ticket. And I was fortunate that I was able to get it thrown out. Because at the time that judge knew me. She was like, you're a good kid, don't come in here anymore. And I never went back. So
that's good.
That was that. So the seatbelt ticket got thrown out. And I was like 19 years old. But so yeah, this is a court that, again, it allows you to make a direct impact. And when you look at the things that I've done, whether it's been with the Urban League, the advisory councils, these different boards and entities, I'm about direct impact, being able to touch the people, help them, make a difference. And me being in this seat and my experiences allows me to do that.
Okay. So what area does this court cover, like servicing, I guess in Harris County, correct?
Yes, it is in Harris County. Precinct is very large. It's actually, I think, one of the largest in the nation.
Okay.
It covers 3rd Ward, where I grew up, Sunnyside, South Park, South Union, Hiram Clark, Meyerland, Reliant, Ricefield, West Airport, parts of South Braze, TSU, University of Houston, and I think that's the majority. It's a very big precinct.
Very big, okay.
And it's heavily African American. There's also a good percentage of Latinos. I think that's the 2nd largest demographic.
Okay.
And so it's one that really impacts our people, and you need somebody, again, who has actually been in our communities and understands their perspective,
right.
And again, can be a voice for them. So
when do we vote?
So election day is March 6th, so you need to make sure that you're registered and registered accurately, because you have to be registered in the precinct in order to vote for me. You can't just live in Harris County because it's not countywide. Early voting starts on February 20th. For senior citizens, the mail ballots are going out probably in the next week or so.
Okay.
And they'll have that at the beginning of February at the latest. And so it's a very critical time. There's actually quite a few judges or judge seats beyond just the justice of the peace. It's a very critical time. And so the issue is, when you look at off years with elections, people typically don't vote.
Right.
So when we look at 16, I think for this precinct, it was around 27,000 that voted. When we go back to 14, it was probably closer to 9,000. So you're talking about a gap of almost 20,000 people that voted in the election. So if you're in the precinct and you're registered, we need you to be at the polls to vote, to participate. We obviously have seen with this last election what happens when we don't.
Right.
And even with our current mayor, he won by, I think, less than 4,000 votes.
Right.
The mayor in Atlanta.
Right.
I mean, these situations are happening more and more frequently. Doug Jones in Alabama. So it's important. We need people to participate. We need to get behind good candidates, people that are actually in the community, and not just politicians, but public servants.
Okay. Do you have any opponents?
I do.
How many do you have?
There are 3 opponents in this race. Well, in the primary. I believe there's also 1 that'll be in the general election.
Okay. So we know that you're going to be running for this position. Is there some place that we can go to donate, help finance the campaign to get you elected to that position? Yes.
So campaigns are expensive. So every dollar counts. So even if it's just $1, just donate something. Tell your friends to donate something. But you can do that at RayShackelford.com. That's RayShackelford.com. Okay. And I know my name is long, so if you want to go to social media, I'm on Instagram, Ray_Shack, and that's RAY_SHACK. So yes, contribute. We'll also have the volunteer portal coming up later this week, so you guys can help block walk, phone bank. There's plenty to do, plenty for you to get involved with. And with me being the only millennial in the race, I definitely want to make sure the young people are activated and involved. And we have something for you to do. Trust me, if you want to get involved, we will find something.
Okay. So before we go, real quick, I know you have, outside of, the guy has many things that he's working on. While he is also doing a campaign, he has a show that comes on. You want to talk a little bit more about your show?
Yes. So I also have a radio show on Synergy Radio Network. And so you can tune in, synergyradionetwork.com. Again, you can find that probably easier on my social media versus me trying to spell out the whole thing.
Right, yeah.
But Agents of Change, we launched that this past February. We did the pilot, so February of 2017. And then March of 2017, we started doing it once a month.
Okay.
It grew, and then in October, we started getting on the air every Monday, and it's from 5 to 6 Central Standard Time. And then in November, I brought on a co-host. So I now co-host that show, Agents of Change, with Shakira Dennis. And it's a platform for young people, for millennials. And it's meant for us to have a voice, but also spark people to get active.
Okay.
Going back to my days at the Urban League, I've constantly been preaching about it's not enough to go to work and go home. You have to be doing something. And I know it sounds like a broken record, but you have to do something. You have to get involved, whether it's mentoring, financial education, whatever your space is. You just need to make sure that you're helping us move the needle and get closer to being in a good position.
Okay. Last thing, what's something you like to do for fun?
Something I like to do for fun, actually watch movies.
Okay.
And people ask me like, what's my favorite movie? It's Lion King.
Wow.
Yeah.
Come on, Simba.
Mufasa.
Mufasa.
R.I.P.
Okay.
We miss him. And so my daughter and I, we watch cartoons. And it's just funny to me. I like animation. People always talk about the faces I make, and they're animated. And so it's even funnier because my daughter makes the same faces. And so, but yeah, we have a good time watching movies.
So I was sure you're going to watch Black Panther.
Oh, absolutely. It actually comes out on her birthday, February 16th.
Oh, nice.
She'll be 8. So yeah, I'm super hyped. I don't know if I'm going to let her watch that, but yeah.
Not yet.
We'll see. I got to go look at it first. But, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, that is our time with Mr. Ray Shackelford. We want to see you again on our show. It's our time. Again, I'm your host, Edidiong Obot.